Hail, welcome to day 10 of the 50-50 karate comeback journey. I apologize I haven't been putting any videos up, but I've had, between personal things taking place and me trying to figure out an optimal routine, both for my body to heal at a faster rate and reduce the amount of damage that I incur per workout. And so I've make a lot of arrangements. And the idea that I thought that I could work out 5 days a week at my age and my condition was it's quite flawed. I've reduced my workout time to 3 days a week, and because of things, like between personal, like I said, and me trying to calibrate my routine, I'm not working the same exact days of the week every week, and I am not. Sometimes I may need to change the exercises, particularly when certain body parts are healing slower than others. Like, for example, my right shoulder has been healing not just slower than my left shoulder, but than the rest of my body because I have scar tissue from years back where I suffered, impingement in my shoulder area. I received physical therapy for it, and it was resolved, but that scar tissue is there, and now I have to like kind of learn how to work around that so that especially since I'm punching, kicking, in basketball, if I'm shooting or dribbling, like I'm constantly like using my shoulders. So I try to shift over exercises that provide less stress while still like conditioning my shoulder. And I'm still not there, but I'm slowly making progress where my shoulder is taking less damage and recuperating at a faster rate. And while not at the same rate as the rest of the body, certainly improvement there, and hopefully, like eventually, it can like kind of balance out. So today, because the past 2 days we've had very bad air quality due to the wildfires in Canada. That's kind of like thrown off my workouts, and I've been like trying to heal up because I've been moving around a lot outside and inhaling a lot of that, and that's like slowing down my recovery process. Uh, and so today I'm just doing some light work, and I figured, what, if I'm just gonna be, like keeping it light, stretching, doing like like light activity, this will be a good time for me to kind of demonstrate it and explain, since I'll be doing things slower. Um, for example, how to throw some punches or kick, and not just how to throw them, but every step of the way and the logic behind it, both at a intuitive level and a uh, biomechanic type of level, physiology, like the physiology behind it, the physics behind it. And so, like, we're gonna start off with a jab. Um, in the in the way that I used to fight, I would never throw a jab like in boxing. So there will be zero. There will never be a time where I would throw a jab in a fight, unless, of course, or front hand punch rather, unless, of course, I was already engaged using my hands with the person. In which case, like if you're facing a certain way and you attack with the front hand, then you're technically throwing that type of punch. Or if I was executing the technique of a blitz, which is a technique particular to karate, um, and even performing a blitz would be like used sparingly during a fight. So like that's not something I would really use unless certain conditions were in place to use it. Back in the days when people were really good kickers in the 90s, in today's fighting world, people are not very good kickers, so you can get away with using a blitz much more, kind of like Michael Venom Page in the past 15 years used blitz a lot and ended up knocking people out. So the difference between a jab, which is essentially you're just executing a punch from your front hand, right, has a certain amount of reach, right, certain amount of power you can generate from it. The difference between that and the blitz is that the blitz is less choreographed, right? So it's harder to determine when someone's going to execute that technique. The technique can cover a long distance. So like where I'm standing from here, you know, in a matter of like a second, I can blitz in and like punch the camera, right? Or someone else standing, but you know, to where the camera's recording. Um, and a blitz, despite the fact that you execute a jab with your front arm, and a blitz you can also execute a front arm, or you can use the back arm, which is not as efficient. But if you execute them both with the front arm, the blitz can generate 5 times more force than a standard punch. Because, as you know, many of you may or may not know, in physics, we learned that force equals mass times acceleration. And because your mass in a given time interval is pretty constant, then that's out of the question. And in order for you to increase your force, you have to increase not your speed, but your acceleration. And there are ways that as athletes, we generate high speed through acceleration by the techniques and how we manipulate our bodies, our body movement. And this is where we're going to get into the whole jabbing sequence. So I'll show a jab slowly from different angles so that you can see more or less what a proper jab should look like. When you're fighting, you always want to provide the least target, the least the smallest target possible, which is why you take a front, left or right fighting stance. At least in the type of style that I used to fight. That is the science behind it. You never want to reveal, like let's say a boxer fights in a neutral position. You never want to reveal that much target. That's too much target. So if your body is sideways, you're providing a smaller target. Your body is sideways, right? Like if I was facing this way, there's less of a target. That's the only difference is I slightly, my feet are slightly facing forward a little, um, and my arm is here, like kind of like sideways from my body. It's kind of like if I just put my arm here, and then I bring this arm here, and then I kind of rotate my face with my feet rotated slightly. So I'm always like if I'm fighting, I'm always providing, like half or less of my total target. Um, then the other thing is that you want to always travel the shortest path possible, um, in any sport. um, Very important in fighting, of course, because you want to have. Let's think about like a game, like a fighting game. You have frame data, and you want to always have the priority. It's always your turn to go. You always want to have the priority in landing the shot before the person can either land their shot or counter. As you're attacking, and so the smallest path is just for you to reach out. Imagine that you are reaching out just to grab something. Can't really grab anything, but let's say if I reach out and I grab the wall, right? I reach out and I grab something, right? So you reach out and you grab something. So that's essentially what a jab is. You're reaching. It's like if you're reaching out to grab something. Um, there are two ways you can throw a punch, and if you've watched fighters, not so much boxers, but maybe like MMA fighters throughout history, you've noticed that they began some, like probably like a good in the late '90s. This started becoming more prominent, where you used to see them come in and attack, come in and throw a straight punch, right? Because while they were right in thinking that this at that time was the most effective way to punch, um, while they were right in that aspect, there are small nuisance to that relate to what I spoke about earlier about building acceleration through movement. Um, so you could just punch straight, right? Now, when you're punching straight, there are a few things that are different. The fact that your knuckles all on the left side, as opposed to going they're vertical as opposed to going horizontally, which means that if you're going horizontal and you kind of like your hand-eye coordination is off, or the opponent manages to shift his position, you can still hit them with one of your knuckles, right? Whereas if you're like this, you can't. The other thing is that if you just extend your arm out, because of the physiology of your body, the way your bicep works, right? And the way your biceps and your triceps, they interact with each other. If you attempt to just put your arm out like that, these are contending forces with each other, and they're which is slowing down the extension of your punch. Yeah, not to mention you got to be careful, with your elbow and everything else is happening. And if you're like this, if your hand is strictly like this, it's easier for your arm to bend because that's a natural movement, which means that um, you'll lose some of your power in your hit, and you also lose the speed, as I explain why. So when you're going to punch, you're always going to come like raise your leg, your knee will bend slightly, and you'll come up on your toes when you punch. And there's two reasons for that. One is that you're pivoting your position, your body position, in order to like reach out and get a little more range, but you're also beginning acceleration. So that movement of just coming up on your toes, it's like torque, giving a burst of acceleration initially when you start, boom. So like you move your body in, like you shift your weight forward, and you reduce the impact of the shifting forward by bending your knee and raising your toes. And when you do that, to add further acceleration to the punch, you rotate your punch. Because later on, like, people can punch straight, like you see me in the videos, right? And that's just kind of like just conditioning the arms. And then, people will hit the speedball, like this type of, motion. Um, but as time goes by, you will learn how to get like a snap. So when I like, if you take my video, put my editing video, if you take my video and put it in editing software and run the jab, punch, hook, uppercut combo that I was doing, you will notice that my hands look a little funny when they're coming out. It looks like I'm doing like this or something like that. But if you measure the speed at which I'm punching, I am executing 4 punches in 0.75 seconds, which is pretty fast. It's not just fast because I'm 50 years old and out of shape. That is really fast even for a young fighter that trains daily. And that is because of the knowledge that I have on how to generate a lot of acceleration in my punches. And so it's a combination of your movement and the way like you snap out like your arms. So over here, you're just not just moving and reaching out like the front punch, like I said, that people eventually caught on to like be direct and started punching, kind of like in a way how they saw old movies of Bruce Lee, or someone further back in time that was very accurate, had very high accuracy with the punches. And so like you want to reach out and you want to punch. Now, um, unless you're already close to someone and you're going to execute, boxing, like kind of like style of movement, you don't want to ever do. You don't ever want to reach to someone to punch, because there's so many different things that they can do, especially in a real fighter or an MMA style of rules, because they can they can kick you, they can rush you and grab you and knock you down. Um, and of course, even if you're throwing a jab, there's depending on their movement, they can weave and counter attack. So you have to be very careful with executing a jab. Well, I will say, if you know how to kick, it would be preferable to kick first before you execute any punches. And I'm going to start making a lot of videos where I explain the science of fighting, um, and what are the most efficient ways to engage uh, in a fight, and how to defend if the aggressor gets priority and it's their turn. But essentially, yeah. So let me execute the punch, because this explanation took a very long time. Uh, so basically, you reach out and you punch. So you reach out and you punch. So you're standing sideways, boom, sideways. You reach out and you punch. You reach out and you punch. So basically, I'm keeping everything straight. The only thing that I'm doing is reaching forward and rotating my punch, because this is acceleration. This is snap. When you do it slowly, you can't really like tell why I'm rotating my punch, right? You can't tell why I'm rotating my punch, but and you can see that I'm moving my legs. But now you understand that there are two things that I'm utilizing to build acceleration, so that I can not only be faster, but I can also apply more force. The reason why a lot of times fighters don't hit hard and they don't have knockout power, or you see people doing demonstrations, is because what they're doing, they're actually not executing a full punch with full speed and full power. What they're doing is that they're cutting their punches short. They're not going through the full range of motion. They're cutting them short. And as a result of that, in order to cut it short, that means that you need to retract the attack, to execute some more and make it seem like it's fast. But if you're doing that, you're completely negating most of the force coming in. You have a certain amount of force coming in, and you're attempting to nullify that force, right, with a equal and opposite force. And so a lot of times you watch fighters, they're really fast, but they don't hit hard. But when I was younger, I was 155 pounds. The heaviest I ever was 155 pounds. I'm roughly almost 5'10". I'm exactly 5'9" and a half. That was 65 pounds lighter that I was when I started a month ago, before I started making videos, where I was 220. 65 pounds extra of fat. So, I was way lighter, and actually even more fat now because I had more muscle, less fat. I was 155, probably like 8% body fat. But I could generate enough power to like injure people that were 200 plus, as I used to spar with individuals that were as heavy as 85 pounds heavier than me. But anyway, there's kind of like a myth that you cannot have power if you have speed. That defies physics, because if you increase the acceleration, naturally your speed is going to be greater, but also your power will be greater, because force is mass times acceleration. And this is something Bruce Lee in his time, when he was very advanced for his time, tried to explain to people. And people were like, oh, pound for pound, this guy hit so hard. Well, there's a reason, Anyway, so from here, if I'm facing you, well, I guess I don't know how the camera can see it, but basically reach out and punch. So from here, reach out and punch. Boom. Reach out and punch. Reach out and punch. Reach out and punch. Now I'll show it from this angle here. Reach out and punch. Notice that I never move my elbow anywhere. My body is straight. I move in a linear form, and I execute. And all I do is I turn my fist, and if I was doing it fast, it'll be like a snap. So when I said that I measured my jab, punch, hook, uppercut combo to 0.75 seconds, basically 45 out of 60 frames in the editing software, I began measuring the combo when there was a shift in position in my body, meaning the moment I began to accelerate, I began counting the frames. So if I'm standing here, if I have not changed position, I didn't. The moment my body like changed position, which I began to use my front leg to generate force. How do you generate that force? You bring your toes up, right? You bring your toes up, which causes your knee kind of like to bend a bit. You bring your toes up to remove the support that is balancing your body to keep you in this position. You bring those toes up, and then you you release the tension on the toes. So when you come in, it's not just releasing, but that it's kind of like if I'm hopping in place, I'm hopping in place. The reason why a fighter will begin to hop in place is because they will begin building torque. So they will get ready to have explosive acceleration, so they can have explosive speed. Uh, but later on, once I get in better shape and I can show closer to what I was able to do when I was younger, you will see how like amazing it is, and how fast and how much just you can cover with like a kick or a blitz when you generate that kind of momentum. So when you're doing the punch, you're raising your toes, and like kind of like and you're kind of like moving forward. So you're like you're coming back down. But basically, what you're doing, it's almost like the hopping. You're using your calf your tendons as a springing mechanism to generate an acceleration, and then you move in, boom, you move in, and then the next acceleration is that the snapping ability of your arm, like pow, the snapping ability. So you're snapping the punch out. You're not coming in and punching like this, right? Like pat, right? Um, Sometimes you have, like a boxer, like like they're fighting and they'll reach out and they'll throw a jab, right? To try to get some more distance. But that is not the same as the full acceleration that you can get from these two movements, with the caveat of you being near your opponent. And so yeah, so that's what it looks like here. Boom, boom. You're just you're just snapping out. Boom, boom. Now I'll do it from this side so you can see the back, right? Boom, boom, boom. So basically, like, and I'm basically like shifting my body weight, so like I'm hitting. I mean, technically, I would have been able to punch with the other arm, but basically, you get into the movement, so you're like, boom, 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 boom. Now this way here, same thing. Your elbows always in to protect your body. Sideways fighting stance, arms up, right near the side of your chins, and you're just like boom. You're like boom, boom. You're just executing boom, boom. When it is all one motion, so it is very imperative as an athlete when you're executing any type of maneuver technique that you have your motion all in one. So if you watch my free throw shooting video, the reason why I could have the reason why I can get so many shots in a row, despite the fact that I'm getting my own rebounds and change my position, is not only because my past the past ability that I gained from the hand-eye coordination that I gained from my past experiences in fighting, but also um, is also about form. And what's happening is that I may have the hand-eye coordination, right, to get a shot in, but if your form is off, you are going to miss. You may be able to get shots in, but you will not be consistent because the form allows you the precision. The form as long as you maintain your form, you're repeating the motion exactly how it was before, and then calibrating with the hand-eye coordination so that you can get that shot in. And one key thing of that form is if you put my video in slow motion when I'm shooting, um, like I'm, so I can fight, I can punch and kick equally with both sides, but I cannot shoot a basketball sides because back when I used to fight, I trained both sides equally. If anything, I trained my back side better than my left side, so I was able to fight anyone at any skill level equally with both sides, and I constantly switch during the fight, which confuses people because people tend to only know how to fight. If you're a righty, you tend to know how to fight a righty, and you don't really know how to fight lefties because you rarely run into a left fighter. And a left fighter has an advantage because they're always fighting righties. They know how to fight a righty, but they may be thrown a little off, with a lefty. But overall, they have an advantage, fighting the righty. But when it came to fighting, I was ambidextrous in the sense that I could throw any punch, any kick with the same speed and power and the same control, the same form, roughly the same form. Sometimes some attacks, for whatever reason or another, depending how the brain created those neural pathways, I was able to generate a little more speed with some techniques from one side than the other, and some force from one side than the other. Sometimes I could generate more force on the left side than the right side. Other techniques, I could generate more force on the right side and the left side. But for all intents and purposes, I was able to punch and kick equally with both sides. And now I'm trying to build the right side of my brain by shooting with the left, so that eventually I can even out my shooting, just for personal reasons. That you would ever want to spend half of your time training if you were serious about competing in basketball or going to NBA, training both sides, because that would just be a waste of time. Just pick a side, become as good as you can with that side for competing purposes. But there is an advantage of shooting from the left side, to some degree, in the sense that you create the neural pathways and the memory and the muscle memory to have better control over the ball and your dribbling, or even when you're trying to score and you're forced to go left and you want to score, from the left side. And in fighting, it is an invaluable tool to be able to fight from both sides. Invaluable. Like, you do not understand the advantage that you have if you can fight equally from both sides. And uh, today people don't do that. Like, they cannot fight from both sides. Most people, if anything, if they can fight well from one side, that's it. But like, sometimes they may change a little. There are a few guys out there that can change a little, but they don't have same mastery. Anyway, um, from this angle, you can see the punch. Boom, 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 boom. You notice? Sorry, I forgot to say. When I was shooting, avoid using my right shoulder. Uh, I don't know if my forms is good with my right than my left. But basically, when I was shooting, right, dribble the ball, whatever, get ready for the shot. Grab this ball. When I come up, it's all one motion. Boom. Oh, so you want the same thing for the punch. Damn. Um, you want the same thing for the punch. So when I begin the acceleration, as soon as I begin acceleration and I hit the point where I'm at the peak before my leg comes down, I snap out. So like, as soon as I hit the peak, the snap is coinciding with me raising my leg. So I'm raising my leg, boom. So when I start raising the leg, my arm starts coming out, but at the same time, because everything happens so fast, by the time my leg hits the peak, the snaps already come out. So you're basically using two different movements to generate acceleration, and you're multiplying the acceleration um, by combining by having the two movements coincide simultaneously. And so like, so when you come up and snap out, you generate more speed, but you also generate more power. Like I said, because of the way the force calculation works. Now the difference between, yeah, so basically, like, yeah, boom, boom, you're just reaching out, pat, pat, like boom, 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 pat, 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 pat. Now, of course, like I said, I would never, ever, ever use a jab to begin an assault, ever. Like, 0 times would that ever occur. The only time that I will use the jab, what boxers refer to as a jab, or just in general, just use my front hand to attack. It's already if I've thrown my opponent. Either I outright knock my opponent down, I've stunned my opponent with the hit, or I've thrown their body off balance. And then I will enter, obviously, with the front hand, not exactly like a jab in boxing, because it'll be more at that point, I'm either transitioning from a kick to a punch, or I'm outright beginning a blitz. The blitz is very different than a boxing. So the boxing jab has very short range. And so well, I fight different than a boxer, but let's say the boxer, is like moving, like how they move or whatever, and they're moving, and they'll like move in and they'll like reach, um, they'll do the like I said, the reach with the jab, to try to, essentially, because boxers use that as kind of like a homing device, like a radar, so that as soon as they make contact, they know to follow up with a power attack. Um, but like I said, when it comes in today's fighting, when there are mixed martial arts involved, or street fighters, or any of that nature, the jab is extremely limited. So only under boxing rules will you ever do a jab. And a boxer will open up with a jab, but you never want to open up with a jab in anything that's outside of boxing rules. Now, in in the martial arts that I used to do, and I'll sometime in the future, I'll give more details about that. Um, but no, I don't want to do that right now. There's a thing called blitz, and when you execute a blitz, Similar to building that momentum, except we will already be building torque through the way like we bounce. Kind of like you saw the video while I was hitting the bag, and you don't see me in the camera because I'm kind of like bouncing. Now, like I come in, chamber the side kick and kick out. Um, we will be building the torque, and when we're ready, we'll explode out, right? So when we're ready, our body will undergo a transition of kind of like lowering its posture because you're going to blitz in like what's this guy's name? So if you ever played like fighting games, let's say like Fatal Fury or something, that I think his name is Terry, and he does like yeah, I forgot what he does, but he comes in with like a punch, like a direct line, like he travels towards you, like a pa, like hits you with a punch. It's more something like that, except in the game, obviously that there isn't much movement going on with legs. Um, so what we're doing here is that we're building the torque through the hopping. When it's time to blitz, what's happening is that your body transitions lower a little, springs out, and punches, right? As you punch, if you're punching right now, I'm left stand. So if I'm punching with the left arm, my right leg is stepping forward. So you blitz in and you'll punch here. Now the problem with the blitz, we'll get to what counters the blitz. I'll explain what the problem with the blitz is. And if you recall what I mentioned about providing a shorter target, you already know what I'm about to say with the blitz, because there's a lot of information that I'm going to impart through these videos, like a lot. Um, so when I blitz in and I punch, I'm stepping forward. But while I'm stepping forward, you see that my target is increasing its size. So that's already one problem, right? So you punch with the left arm. I don't know if the camera can capture this properly, but basically you blitz, punch with the left arm, punch with the right arm. If anyone does a blitz with only one punch, that is not a smart thing to do, because once you miss with the punch, you're in trouble. And while the front hand generates a huge amount of force, the front hand will either stun someone or knock them down, if not outright knock them out. The best case scenario is knock them out. The worst case scenario is going to be that they'll be stunned. Even if it's a very, very light stun where they pretty much shake off and you do not, and they could potentially counter. The stun is so short that they could potentially counter. But as long as you land the blitz, it is likely they will get stunned, because, like I said, it generates 5 times more force than a regular front hand punch. So you blitz in, boom, boom, and you're punching with the left. You're like running like Superman. Your shoulders, like defending you, like to deflect attacks, similar like if you were to throw a jab in boxing. So you'll come in, you'll reach out, boom, and then you'll turn around with the other hand, boom, and you'll punch. I was doing blitzes in the video that I hit the heavy bag, but I didn't put them up because I was covering so much distance that most of the time you cannot see me, other than when I already landed the hits in the bag. So that it wasn't good for a video. Unless I could get someone to help me like record later in the future, then I can show more things. But essentially from here, you're going to blitz in, boom, boom. Like you're low, you're kind of like you're lowering as you reach out. So the moment you move out is all one motion, because when you start reaching out, like when you start moving in to cross with the attack, you're reaching out. So basically, like I don't want to do it fast because like I'm probably running to the camera or something. But when I'm doing it slowly, you don't see the full displacement of your position, because remember, I said you're building torque and you explode with like a high velocity. And so, you're reaching out. When you reach out to hit, the moment you connect, and you will connect from a long distance, given you connected the hit. The moment you connect and the person gets stunned and you come in with a backhand, and you hit them, like if you land both hits, they're definitely going to fall to the floor. There is no way most humans, pretty much no human, will be able to absorb a full combo from a blitz and still be standing. They will either be knocked out or they will be stunned and knocked on the floor if you catch them with the blitz. Now the problem with the blitz, so if you're attempting to jab me, right? Attempting to jab me, I can maneuver, with weaves, right? You could come jab me. I can move in, and I'll either counter you like a boxer, like would. And I say boxer because the way I used to fight was not boxing, it was not karate. I call it karate because I'm kicking, and it's easier to explain to people how I used to fight. But I used to use my legs and my hands 50-50, and I used to train in boxing gyms also. Not just I used most of the time I wasn't in a boxing gym, but I did go to the boxing gyms at least once a week to train my hands. Although I train my hands more outside of the boxing gym than outside of the boxing gym than I train my hands more where I trained than the boxing gym. But the point is, I had full mastery like a boxer. The only different things I didn't compete in actual like boxing rules. But as far as my hands, they were as good as any boxers, any high skill boxer. And of course, my legs were like. Anyway, I don't want to talk about who I was in the past, but the the point is basically that the jab has a limitation because someone can counter the jab, and the problem with the jab is that the jab does not have stopping power. Now, there could be some occasions where people's physiologies are different than others. Like let's say, for example, if Mike Tyson fought someone tall, right? Like Holyfield, or I forgot the other guy's name. I can't recall his name at the moment. And those guys are moving around, they're jabbing because of their weight and because of the distance, their reach. They can eventually inflict, some damage. But the fact of the matter is that all things equal, a jab doesn't really have stopping power. A jab is not something to stop, someone's momentum. The jab is just kind of like a radar. And so, because it's a radar, someone can actually purposely, they can either decide to like parry the jab and counter. They can decide to weave, so like dodge and counter. Um, they can decide to like block and counter. They can decide to do any of those defensive maneuvers, block parry, or evade, and counter. And they can counter with a punch. They can counter with an elbow. They can counter with many different things. They can weave, you know, basically like blitz the person with their body and like grab their legs and knock them down. And now that person, if they don't know how to grab it, they're in trouble. And so like there are many things that that make the jab effective in certain situations, but most situations not as effective. The blitz, however, is effective in all situations. The blitz is a very dangerous technique that, when performed properly, can counter any type of fighting given that you land a hit. The problem with the blitz, and more so the problem back when people actually knew how to kick, and later on as time progresses, I'll explain why I'm making that statement. Why I'm saying that people don't know how to kick today, the way we kicked in the 90s. If a person knows how to kick properly, then doing the risk is extremely risky. The blitz is extremely risky. And you pretty much shouldn't be doing the blitz if you're shorter than someone or at similar height if they're kicking. Because the blitz, particularly back in the days when people were really good at blitz and were good at kicking, favored the person that had the greater reach. So if it was a tall person, a 6'2" person, fighting someone that's 5'6", 5'8", 5'10", whatever, and they were taller than them, and they had a reach advantage, the blitz made them extremely dangerous. Of course, you needed to practice the blitz. You needed to generate sufficient speed, although when you had the reach, it gave you the advantage of circumventing having to be as quick as fast as would be typically required. Um, but also, the problem with the blitz is that because I explained that the blitz generates a huge amount of force, it's generating that force because it has massive acceleration. But there is one key issue with the blitz. The problem with the blitz is that the blitz is because it generates so much force, you cannot change your trajectory, which means that the blitz is a linear type of attack. And so the weakness of the blitz is because you can't change your trajectory, there are multiple ways to defend against it, of which I'll probably discuss sometime in the future. But, one idea is if you could kick. Now, to wrap this video up, because this got very long and it's not what I had in mind initially, but I kind of like went down this rabbit hole. So today's fighters are very inefficient in kicking. Forget about whether they can kick or not. They're inefficient in kicking because the kicks that they're doing are literally useless against anyone that knows how to also kick. So I don't want to get too deep into this because there will be like more advanced information I have to explain after I go through all the basic jab, punch, hook, uppercut, different kicks, and the such, the different attacks that you can execute. But I will say that anyone who jumps during a fight, like many fighters do today, 100% of the time will not only lose their priority, will likely get significantly injured. Anyone who spins during a fight, especially if you do a spinning hook kick, of which I don't want to kick now because I don't want to I'm supposed to be resting, but I'll show like kicks later in other videos. Anyone who's doing a spinning kick that traverses through circular motion, again, the way I used to fight is you're just asking to get injured, and you're definitely going to lose your priority. Anyone who's throwing front kicks, as funny as it is, like a front kicks, now how the people are like using front kicks is quite comical because a front kick is literally a trash kick. Roundhouse, any kick, again, that traverses a circular motion is garbage against any competent fighter. Nowadays, they love throwing roundhouse from the back leg. There are so many issues with that I will explain in coming videos. But again, I will tell you, if you become airbound, if you execute any attack that has circular motion, you're basically cooked. And it's laughable how today's fighters don't know how to get around that. It's insane. But anyway, I'll explain that in other videos. So all these roundhouse kicks, whether it's from the back leg or from the front leg, they're useless. The most important kick that you want to learn for fighting any style, including real fight, MMA, whatever it is a side kick. The kicks that you see me mainly executing. And I'll explain the dynamics of that in another video. But essentially, the person doing the blitz, if someone is utilizing side kicks, that person, the blitz, is going to be in serious danger. If given those side kicks are being both executed with proper form and the person has sufficient speed and is not slow as hell, obviously there is an inflection point where if you don't bring your leg up quickly enough, and especially if you're fighting someone that's taller than you and have the reach, then they could technically do a few maneuvers in order to try to get around. But for intents and purposes, I'll leave you guys with this: the most effective opening attack in any form of fighting is a side kick, and I will prove this as time goes by. Now, I'm 50 years old and I'm out of shape. I've not trained in decades. As I go through this journey and I get in shape, not only would I demonstrate in videos, I will explain the science behind it. And when I get in sufficient amount of shape, I will go to gyms and I will spar people that are younger than me in the gym so that I can demonstrate why these are more effective than any of the techniques that are being utilized today. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. This video is long as hell. No one's probably gonna watch it. But yeah, maybe I hope that some people found this long drawn out explanation, somewhat exciting or useful. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.